I'm going to talk about today about the problem that I have with AI and with the UX of AI. I worked on AI solutions for quite a while. I still think there's no AI out there. It's all machine learning and lots of if statements and clever databases. But we're very happy about calling everything AI, and it's the big new hype. All the resources in my talk are behind this robot barf, so you can actually scan that one, and there's going to be a lot of resources, so it might be a good thing to have. Alternatively, you can also type down the URL, so if you go to gist.github.com, code point 7AFA09CC9F, no, or just scan the thing, that might be the other option to do that. Now, who am I? I've been 25 years a web developer. I'm not a 25-year-old web developer, as Dylan just called me. And I wrote 3 JavaScript books and contributed to dozens of others, accessibility books, books on UI, books on API design. In the 30 years that I did IT, I've never set up a database in my life, and I'm very proud of that. I'm a W3C member on the Machine Learning on Device group to make sure that actually devices like mobile phones and laptops can actually run models rather than us having to use the cloud all the time. I worked on Firefox and Microsoft Edge. Firefox for 5 years, Microsoft Edge for 8 years. I was CPM for the Chromium developer tools and Visual Studio Code integration, and now I'm the VP of DevRel at wearedevelopers.com. So in short, I kind of know this stuff, and I've done it for a long time, and I know what developers need. So, hey, do you want to have a chat? Everywhere, all the time, and as your main interaction with computers. Because according to the market that we're in right now, ChatGPT is computing. And everybody can be a developer because of ChatGPT, or a designer, or a chef, or a gardener, or almost anything out on this planet. It's also the fastest growing consumer app in internet history, until Threads came around, and then 4 months later Threads didn't have any users anymore. I'm going to give another talk in 3 weeks' time that I still have to write, which doesn't scare me at all. About explosive growth and how this has to stop. How everything that we create has to be a $100 million user thing or it's not worth anything. Writing a few lines of code that do something cool is good enough. It's great. You don't have to be another $100 million app. But ChatGPT really blew up in the face of everybody and became a big thing. And it was because it was kind of a perfect storm. It was a replacement for web search, and I wrote about this. I worked on Bing, I worked on Yahoo search before that, I worked with Google on things, and I'm very disappointed by the state of search these days. You search for something, you have like a defined term. You say like, I want this shirt from that brand in that size, and then you basically get like 200 ads telling you, do you want to have a toilet seat instead? So web search used to be the thing that found me good things on the internet. Now this is basically hidden in 10,000 ads and clever interaction things, and web search is kind of dead. And that's why ChatGPT filled a gap that people had. I just want to know how to make pancakes, and ChatGPT explained to you how to make pancakes, not like, do you want to buy a subscription to pancakes or something else. ChatGPT was a great alternative to get that information. And the interface appeared mock-human and very sci-fi. We all grew up with Star Trek, and people like, computer, tell me what to do, and a computer would do it. And that felt like that. You were chatting with a computer, or you were chatting with a very clever person. And that clever person explained things to you in a human fashion. And that not only for us was cool because we got the sci-fi bit, but for the normal users that don't like computers, for the first time it felt for them like, this is like a helpful help desk, you know, some helpline that I call that gives me information. And the results sounded incredibly useful. In English, in other languages not so much, but in English it sounds very Californian and like very much like I know this stuff. I like calling ChatGPT mansplaining as a service, because it can tell you utter nonsense, but it sounds very, very interesting. And it sounds, oh, clever. Wait, that doesn't make any sense, but it still sounds clever. You know, like Trump speaks and other people. And this is what it looked like, and this was the go-to that everybody said, like, oh my God, this is what's going to be the future. So I type something in, and it types it down, and I interact with it. I ask it more questions. I ask it to verify. I ask it to regenerate. And I mean, flattery is one thing, but Google Bard looks like this, so I'm like, okay, you didn't put much effort into do UX research to do something else than ChatGPT, because this is kind of a clone of each other, but it feels like this was the most effective way to tell people about GPT. What is really, really fascinating is if you go to Google Bard now in Microsoft Edge, and you go to bard.google.com, you get this alert in the URL bar if you want to compare the answers with Bing AI instead, and then ask you to open Bing AI next to it. It's a bit like asking Siri, can you ask Alexa to tell me what the weather is and start arguing with her for me, please? Because I want just to go there to get the information. I don't give a crap if Bard is better or Bing is better. I basically want only one information piece that gives me that information. But what we do here is overload the end users with options because we want their clicks and we want their eyeballs. Because the great thing about ChatGPT is that it's super sticky. And I always like it that UX people, not UX people, marketing people like the term sticky because it means like, ooh, more clicks, more ads. Sticky always sounds to me like something I want to wash off, but it seems like I'm not a marketing person. And there's a full browser integration in Microsoft Edge, so that's actually quite cool. You can press open that Bing thing, and then the ChatGPT instance inside Bing opens, and you can actually generate a page summary from the page that you're in, so you can stay in that context. I don't mind that. I mind that it tells me while I'm already in a chat system to tell me to use yet another chat system. Because that sounds to me like that guy. And Dylan had that in the beginning as well. And the thing about Clippy is it was actually not a bad idea, because back then Word and PowerPoint was just an absolute mess. Nobody knew how to find the information. It was basically driven by new features rather than like user research, what users really wanted. So Clippy basically, when you typed something, it says like, it seems you're trying to type a letter, can I help you? The problem was it didn't help you, it just showed you other stuff that you didn't need, and that's why it became that kind of running joke. So it is actually a UX bankruptcy was that Clippy thing, like we built an interface that is not understandable, so let's put an assistant in there that explains people how to use it. IKEA had this chatbot in Flash in like 2001 where you can chat with a really creepy artificial lady about IKEA things as well, and these things are coming back as well, sadly enough. So it became an annoyance rather than a helper. The thing was always in your way rather than just helping you to get faster to the end result that you wanted to have. And nowadays we have ClipA, which is basically the same thing because we're trying to put a chat system into bloody everything out there. Like, no, I don't want to go into a chat system because it's a sticky, addictive environment. It basically means that I'm 100% connected with that computer at that moment, and I chat with it. I already had a task. I needed to build a PowerPoint. I didn't want to go into ChatGPT and then spend 20 minutes how that PowerPoint should look. I had a task, please help me with that task, rather than getting me into another environment. So let's avoid the old traps of Clippy to just basically put the system next to the other system to appear helpful, but instead look at what we can do when we use AI or when we use LLMs in our environments. And almost everybody has that dream right now to build a ChatGPT plugin or an AI-powered app to become the next big thing. So AI-powered chat systems have a few problems. They take a lot of time. And we don't realize it because the thing animates and types in and we look at it and you're like, oh, now I know the pancake recipe, and it only took like 24 minutes, which would have been like 2 seconds in a proper search engine to give me the pancake recipe. But it felt interesting, it felt exciting to do, but the full typing that when it answers you back is fun at first, but it gets annoying fast, especially when you cannot intercept it. When you realize the machine is telling you something stupid or starts hallucinating, as they call it, and it's still animating, and you're like, no, you're wrong, just tell me something else, I want to go to the next step. The other problem is that discarded interaction doesn't mean positive experience. A lot of these systems, actually, when you communicated with them and you found the result and you stopped communicating with them, a dumb system would upvote that result and say like, oh, that person got what they came for, so that was the right result. But the person might have been so annoyed with the result that they actually don't want to communicate with the machine anymore. It's like when your partner says like, oh, is everything all right? Yeah, everything is all right. No, you probably should ask another question. It might not be fully all right yet. You might be something that you've done that you don't quite know yet. And then they're not demanding context. A lot of these chat systems, basically the cheaper ones that are basically just a search engine in disguise, will basically not ask for context. They say like, write me a song. And it should say like, what kind of song do you want to have? It should be a real communication to ask for more detailed context. Because if your prompt is not good enough, the result will not be good enough either. And it's also the problem of do you feel lucky? So using ChatGPT and asking it something is like hitting the I feel lucky button on Google, because it's only one result. It's not several results that you can choose from, but it's the one result that the machine thought was the cleverest one. And that is, if it's not the right result, it's really frustrating. And if it's the right result, well, good for it, but it's not that often. So AI and voice recognition makes the web accessible to all is a big selling point that people do right now. Like, okay, it's great to talk to a computer because then grandmother and grandfather who don't like computers can actually start interacting with the machine. It's great when you have voice recognition because people who can't use a mouse, can't use a keyboard, can actually interact with the computer and do it. There's great videos out there of people with like cerebral palsy programming with GitHub Copilot because they can talk to it. And it's wonderful that these things are in there, but these are also headlines, because in essence, talking to a computer is kind of the most inefficient way to talk to something. I hate that in sci-fi movies when you got robots talking to each other. Like, why would they do that? Or any AI article that you see right now is some robot typing on a keyboard. You know, teaching a robot to type on a keyboard is really, really hard. Sounds exciting, but it's also the most stupid way a computer would interact with a robot, or the other way around. So when GitHub Copilot said that it's going to have voice recognition, one of my favorite was one of those YouTube cool code guys when he's like, oh, I'm looking forward to that because then I can program on the cross trainer. And you're like, just shut up. You know, like, no, just go to the gym and be like the bro there and then go back and be the code bro there. But no, you're not going to program on a cross trainer because like half your code will be like wheezing and coughing, and that's not something that the computer would recognize properly. So there's also a big problem that these interfaces are not accessible, and we talked about accessibility earlier. There's basically an analysis of what a screen reader would do with the output of ChatGPT, or somebody who actually turned off animations. A lot of people turn off animations on the operating system level, and that's because they get confused when there's animating things. Their battery life is basically not so good. They want to turn off animations. And if you turn off animations on the operating system level, all your animations in your application should be turned off as well. We can do that in CSS, we can do that in JavaScript. That's what media queries are for. But not a single one of those ChatGPT kind of interfaces, when I have turned off animation, will still do the typing for me, confusing somebody who cannot deal with animations. So we haven't even thought about accessibility of that. So AI is here to stay. The question is now how, and how we as developers and designers and people who use AI are going to make the next level of that ChatGPT thing. It could be a lock-in addiction machine like ChatGPT to a degree is, and Bing tries to be. So basically it tells you like, oh, keep chatting with me and I tell you more cool things. I can tell you a joke if you want to. Yeah, you can also get out of my way and let me do my job. That might be the other option. Should it be a distracting helper? Like, oh, these slides seem to have the information, but I can make a dinosaur dance in the background. Do you want that? Automator of the obvious. That will be a good thing to do. If I do the same 10 tasks in an app, maybe the machine should tell me, hey, here's a new button that does these 10 tasks for you, like create an automation script from your interaction. That's something I haven't seen much yet. Enhancement to existing use cases, like you already do this, let's make it better by computers by doing the automated rounding for you, centering the image, cutting the video to the right resolution, and so on and so forth. Or an eager listener and problem solver, like, hey, I like that in mail systems when it says like, okay, you said that, you forgot the attachment, or you basically talked about that one person, that person isn't English. Are you sure that your English is not too complex for them to read? It would be fun if the machine helps you to actually interact better with other people. So I want more helpful things and less noise. But what we do right now is noise, because it's about the clicks, it's about downloads, it's about interactions. This is now Bing when I'm using it on my MacBook here, and I accidentally just swipe down. And out of a sudden, I get the chat system of Bing, and okay, I did that wrong, so I'm scrolling down, and I want to do a real search. I want to do how these chat systems work with a screen reader. And instead of getting explanations that there might be problems, I just get information how to install a screen reader, how to fix ChatGPT. Is OpenAI down? My chat system started running without me interacting with it, so that's already happening. So when I'm on a screen reader, I probably hear that crap in the background. I don't know where it came from. So all over the place, the machine is offering me things rather than just offering me the result that I came for. So we try to actually get people away from doing a search, clicking on something and being happy. We want them to actually start chatting with the machine, start doing more searches, stay within the box, do more clicks. Now, developer tools is something that I worked on for 10 years. And in that case, AI is really, really useful. And I'm going to show you a lot of examples how GitHub Copilot, in this case, is really useful and what they've done right. And if you want to do a developer tool that is AI-powered, these are the right things to do. But the wrong things to do is not integrating with existing tool chains. Like tell people, okay, how do I become a JavaScript developer? Go to ChatGPT and type that thing in and copy and paste the thing somewhere else. No. Do it in the environment where you're actually going to be a developer. Stay in that environment and enhance that. Generating code versus aiding development. Like here's a function that does it. I'm not going to tell you if it's secure. I'm not going to tell you if it works. Most of the time, the generated stuff doesn't even work. And I like that the other day was Replit, I think, that said, like, okay, it's generating code for you, and then it validates it immediately, and then it says, oh, by the way, that's not right, and then it shows you another one, oh, that's not right, oh, that's not right, that's also right. So you're sitting next to the machine trying to figure stuff out. That's wasting my time again. I might as well just work with another developer. That is a really, really bad interface. It's honest because it does the validation, but it should just tell you like, oh, I'm working on that. I found 5 solutions. I'm checking them. Come back in 3 minutes and do something else, and I have the result for you, rather than you sitting there like, oh, that was wrong as well. That was wrong as well. What's the usefulness of that? Offering outdated results. LLMs, like the large language models that these things are based on, cost a lot of energy and effort to work. And they actually cost a lot of money to get as well with the data. So most of these LLMs, the free ones, are like 2 to 3 years old. The other day I wanted it to help me with Playwright, and actually it gave me API calls from the API from 2 years ago that is not working anymore because the LLM was that outdated. Generating invalid, insecure, and unoptimized results. There is no validation. It just gives you code back and says like, good luck. That might be something that you want to do. Mind you, that's what we do with randomly copying from Stack Overflow as well. But the machine shouldn't do that for us. So the interaction models that we have is function via name completion. So you write a function called share to Twitter in this case, and then you see GitHub Copilot spinning and doing stuff and offering you a full function. That's one way how people use it, and also you can have a comment saying that and then generate the function that way. There's also the tab completion thing, where you can actually type a new function and type the name, and then instead of waiting for the whole function, you actually write line by line and let the machine do the next step for you. And that gives you a bit more control, and you actually realize that makes sense, that doesn't make sense, that makes sense, stop doing that. So you got the interaction that you don't have in ChatGPT, where you can say if something goes in the wrong direction, you can tell it to stop doing it. There's inline creation via prompt, so you can use Command-Shift-I, and you can highlight some part of code, and then you actually, oops, what's going on there? And you get this Copilot directly in here, so you can say like create a function that does something, I don't know what I typed in that demo because that was yesterday night, that shares to Twitter, okay. And then it actually does thinking, and then it offers you that, and it offers you to it in an inline div view as well. So you can actually see the changes that are coming in there, and you can edit them before you submit it back into your code. So you don't overwrite your whole code, but you actually see the changes, and you have another editorial step in there. And this editorial step is super important because it means you have to interact with the code that was generated and validated rather than hoping it's right. You can also add comments, so you can highlight a bit of code, and then you can tell it to actually comment it. And that's a big discussion where angry code bros say like comments are not needed, but they are very much needed because you will come back to your own code months later and have no idea what you've been doing. So you can actually say add comments, and then it will actually do step-by-step comments for you on the code, and again giving you the div view saying like, are these comments making sense? You could delete the ones you don't want to have. You can actually take the ones that you want to have. You can also do the JS doc comments, which is something I always hated doing by hand, and there were lots of packages in VS doing that. So you can highlight that and say like do a doc comment, and then it creates all the types and describes the types for you and describes all the functionality that is in there as a JS doc comment in case you generate your documentation automatically from those things. That's quite a helper as well. Did it take a bit long in that demo because it was in the hotel room. There's chat integration explained, so I can highlight a bit of code and you can say like, hey, explain to me what that thing does, and then the chat window, instead of taking me to another window, stays in the same editor and tells me this is what's happening here and this is what's going on here. I like that because that helps me also understand other people's code or even learn another language. Like if I go to a Python code that I don't understand, why is it like that? It actually explains to you what it is. It also does code translation, so you can translate from one code to another language, which of course most of the time won't work, but it's a good idea to actually get used to the syntax of another language in an interactive manner. Code referencing is a very interesting one because that's a performance, a compliance issue. So if you get some code auto-completed in GitHub Copilot, you can say reference this, and actually it will give you a warning that it's actually code that's been used somewhere else. So in this case, I get a pop-up and say like, hey, that's actually from another code base, and it shows you where in that code base it is and what license it has. So when you get auto-completed code, that is from somewhere else, and you're in an environment where you cannot use MIT licensed code, that's a very good thing to cover your ass, basically. Code workflow integration is another interesting one, because when you do pull requests, people don't write pull requests. It's just a pain. It's like I worked on Microsoft products and people sent me pull requests, doesn't work. And you're like, okay, what should I do with that? I would love to spend time with you to help you understand my code, but if you just say it doesn't work, that doesn't help me. So what I like in the code workflow integration is that you can say like, create a description and a summary of what changes were, and then create a walkthrough. So in this case, it will take the code, analyze it, and then create a human-readable description telling you what the code changes were, and also a step-by-step explanation how to validate that actually that code was done. So that's something I do by hand right now, but that's actually Copilot for GitHub pull requests. Terminal integration is another one where I do question mark and say like, I want to convert all the videos in this folder to another size, and then it generates a bash script for me, explains the bash script, and actually you can run or cancel it. So that's pretty nice as well. It's very important that you tighten the context at times. So instead of having the world in ChatGPT, you can tighten it to a certain code base. So in this case, MDN or React. And then you can actually filter and say like, I'm an intermediate developer, I'm a new developer, I'm an expert, I just want to have the information. I know this material well, and then you get the answers according to this level that you want to learn. And you get the answers with references to the rest of the documentation. So in this case, you get the chat back and you can see where in the official documentation it came from, and you can actually then see that it actually is the valid code, and you can copy it the way you want it to. GitHub wrote that whole thing down, a guide to designing and shipping AI developer tools. There's a huge guideline explained to you how they've done that. Authoring tools, writing, for us just to do writing rather than coding. Not starting with a good word processor is the worst mistake I've seen with people. I had 8 people send me things, oh, you want to write blog posts? Use our stuff. And their editors couldn't copy and paste. That's not a good word editor. This is something I don't want to use. It disrupts the writing process. Basically, oh, you wrote this, I'm going to override it because it makes more sense. You generate tons of text without style matching. So a lot of like these things generate text for me, but it doesn't realize that the rest of the text I wrote around it is in a completely different style. So it makes me sound like a Californian sales guy rather than myself. And it repeats content. Oftentimes, you have like one paragraph generated, and then it repeats the same sentences over and over again. That makes no sense. There's a system I call, an app I use called Hemingway. And Hemingway shows you the reading level that your text is in, like how well people have to know English to understand yours, how many words it has, and so on and so forth. And it shows you the problematic sentences. It says like, this sentence is too long, this sentence is hard to read, and this sentence has adverbs in it that you shouldn't be using. And the new version of Hemingway actually allows you then to click on those sentences and say like, okay, rewrite that for me, fix it for me. So you get that sentence and you can compare them next to each other, and you can say, okay, this is postgraduate and now it's grade 9, so I want to use that sentence and make it easier. You can also generate content by using a slash that actually generates text inside Hemingway. The problem with that is that it actually doesn't follow its own rules, so the generated content, you have to clean it up again according to the Hemingway writing rules. There's an emerging convention, slash commands. Like most of the things that allow you to do text entry is basically when you type the slash, it actually shows you the possible commands. So in this case, write some content for me, or in GitHub Copilot, do explain, fix, web, and help. So that's an interesting pattern that you might want to think about if you build something like that as well. The problem with that is findability. People don't know the slash commands yet, but it might be something that becomes commonplace, much like command palettes are inside Visual Studio Code or inside the developer tools, inside browsers even, but people don't use them yet, and you should use them because they're really useful. Video tools is an interesting one because there's a lot of them that generate videos without editing options, so they basically give you the video and let's like be happy with that or generate another one for more dollars. They're offering the same as filters in chat systems oftentimes. They just like remove a background or something like that, but nothing clever. And create packaged content without tracks, so you cannot actually separate the tracks in the video out anymore. It's just one MKV file or something like that. Video tab is something I'm really using a lot right now. It actually, you upload a video, it creates a transcript for you. Then it actually takes that transcript, creates subtitles from it, timed subtitles that you can use. Then it creates it takes that transcript, creates social media tidbits like tweets that are interesting, sentences inside that video. Then it creates a meta summary for you, like for your website. It creates YouTube meta content for you. It creates a blog post from your video using ChatGPT. When I talk about a URL, it will be a link in that blog post. When I talk about a code example, it will be a code block. It creates headings for you. It creates paragraphs for you. And it also creates clips for promotion. So I can actually take a part of that video and can go to the transcript and highlight a part of the text and say, like, make me a video from that part of the text. And that way you can actually generate small, like, YouTube or Instagram videos that actually will have these overlays for it. So I highlight a bit of the text and say, like, make a video out of that. Should have been faster with these video demos because Dylan is freaking out here. So create clip from the select. Yeah.
Almost on stage.
Yeah. So you can actually define how many words are going to be displayed, the highlight color, the text size, and so on and so forth. So you can create a smaller video from the transcript of a larger video. Graphical tools you can generate destructively. That's another thing, like generate a cool image. And you're like, yeah, you got to go to a cool image. I got no layers, I got no colors, I don't know what to do with that video, with that image. Full page versus component thinking. It creates, like the big demo was somebody painting a website and he created basically one image from it rather than just create something that I can use. There's a system called OpenDream on GitHub that actually does it non-destructively, so it generates images but gives you the layers, so you can actually interact with the different layers of it. And there's a company that I work with called Locify that actually is a plugin for all design systems for like Figma and Adobe XD and so on. And it actually creates components from your design. So when you have a button in Figma, it tells you should that be a button in React as well, and creates a React component that creates a real button rather than just a design that might be a div with 6,000 actions on them. So it does deep analysis of what these things might be to create the right component for you. And integrates with all the design things and then creates it for all these different environments for you. So if you want to include AI in your products, try to stand out with good UX and local relevance. That's another thing. As I said before, in English, all these things are great. In Serbian, probably not. But you could be the first company with somebody who's done language analysis for a long time. Several companies out there that could be the first chat system in Serbian that doesn't give random nonsense back. That would be a great idea. You don't have to be 100 million users a day, but you have to be a successful one for your city, for your environment, and that's already a good thing to do. So this can be a revolution or just another hype with lots of wasted money and energy, and many a forgotten startup that disrupted too hard and tried to be too cool. That's all I had, so thanks very much.